Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back, Michael, with Amanda today. Amanda, appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Hey, no problem. Appreciate your time. So we're coming at everybody live again with another episode of military to civilian life. The ultimate road march to freedom, I guess you could call it. Um, so if you don't mind introducing yourself and letting everyone know, where you're from, if you want to add that, and let everybody know what branch of service did you join, why did you join, and then just take us through up to the time where you started thinking about getting out the military. And just say where the floor is yours.
Sounds good. So I grew up in Central California and I didn't have a military background, but September 11th happened my senior year of high school and it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that there was a military and that was an option. And so I started looking into it my freshman year of college and I was going to enlist into the Air National Guard, but my friend took me to lunch and he was doing the Reserve Officer Training Corps program at the university, and so I went to the open house for that at the same time of looking at enlisting, and I said, oh, I can try this out and there's no commitment. I'm going to do this instead. And so I did ROTC. I love the program. I commissioned in 2007. My husband, who I met in ROTC, had commissioned the year before, so I moved to New Mexico and we served on active duty, dual military for 6 years. We didn't spend a lot of time together. I deployed, he was TDY a lot. And then when I got pregnant with my first son, I said, I don't want to deploy with a 6-month-old. And it was already really hard to get stationed together. So I thought all the sacrifices the military was going to ask for was too much. And so I decided to get out of the military.
So, did you have a plan when you were getting ready to get out, or did you just sort of play it by ear, figure out when you're going to get out and go from there?
I mean, I had a plan to be a stay-at-home mom, so I went to TAP and I had a lot of ideas of what staying at home with the baby would be like, and none of them met reality. And so I had a plan, but it kind of like all went to crap once I got out of the military.
So you had like a plan A, but not really a plan B or C. So you just were riding on one thing and all your eggs in one basket, and they all cracked pretty much.
Pretty much, yes.
What was your what was your like reaction to that?
Well, I just felt like a failure as a mom. I really struggled with, I guess, I don't know, I guess I need positive words of affirmation. And my husband also left for training 2 months after my son was born, and so I was getting out of the military at home with a baby by myself, and my family was in California and we were in Ohio, and so it was just like everything was, not going well. I said I didn't have postpartum depression, but I probably had some sort of, mental health challenges that I was ignoring. And so I just really struggled with why did I get out of the military to stay at home, and really struggled just overall.
What helped you get out of that struggle?
I started a blog where I actually got connected with a bunch of women who weren't military connected, but it was kind of like a community. We were all blogging and we would read each other's blogs and write comments, and got to know each other. And I just started to build a community outside of, I guess, on the internet with other women who are doing something similar. And so that slowly led to me creating a community with women veterans and then getting involved in the veteran community. But it was a very slow process.
What made you get involved in doing a blog? Did you like writing and stuff like that before?
Yeah, I've always liked writing, but in high school my English teachers were like, you can't write. So that kind of like made me think I wasn't a good writer, but I just loved writing so much that I wanted to share stories. And when I was deployed to Afghanistan, I would send letters home to people. I had an email list of people that wanted to hear updates about what was going on, and so I would share stories from that. And so that was kind of the initial idea for the blog, was to talk about what it was like to be a mom and get out of the military, but also talk about what it was like to deploy to Afghanistan.
Where'd you go to Afghanistan?
I was in Kapisa, which is a small province about the size of Rhode Island, east of Bagram.
Okay, so you got the cold weather up there. I was in RC South and Southwest the both times I went, so you're up in the snow
Yeah,
a
it
little bit.
was cold when I was there from like the end of February, beginning of March to October, so it wasn't there was snow on the mountains, but it wasn't like that cold, but it wasn't super hot. I mean, it got into like the 90s, but nothing more than that.
Right. So you missed the cold winter
Yeah.
months, but that's not a problem. That's you didn't miss nothing special, so you're good. Um, so you would say the blog overall helped your mental health and stuff like that once you started getting that community going, even though you had like-minded people that were probably moms and stuff like that on there, that sort of helped you get out of the rut, you would say?
Yeah. I mean, I also got mental health help later on, which was even more helpful, but yes, that was definitely starting to get me moving in the right direction.
When you were in the service, do you think you ever like needed did you ever have to go to sick call for anything or like get treatment? Did you go to like mental health, like even like after deployment? Did you guys do stuff like that or did you sort of just brush it off?
So when I got home from my deployment, I went to the Airman Family Readiness Center, and I don't know if they had a counselor or what this person that I talked to was, but I told her that like something seems off. I feel like there's something wrong, and she said, "Well, you've only been home for I mean, I've been home for less than a week." She's just like, "You'll be fine." She didn't ask me like what I had experienced because I experienced combat and a lot of like mental there was a lot of infighting within the team, so there was a lot of drama in that aspect. And I don't even remember what we talked about, but I do remember she told me, "You've been home for a few days, it'll get better." And so I took that piece of advice of her saying I would be fine after a few months, and I kind of just pushed all the emotions that I was feeling down and was like, "You'll get over it, just move forward, don't worry about it." And that was not a good idea. It was definitely
Yeah.
not good.
Turn into like a ticking time bomb almost. They try to tell you to like
Oh,
drink
yeah.
water and take a knee, take ibuprofen, fill out a hurt feelings report, and just report back like never. They're like don't come. Type of yeah, it's kind of crazy. That was like the kind of the stigma, I guess, during all those years because I was in '07 to 15, so it's kind of like you know, and
Yeah.
it just like no one really did it, and if you did, you were labeled like a dirtbag type of deal. When it's kind of like
Yeah,
you
or
just
you
said,
were told, "You get over it, you're fine."
yeah.
Like, they didn't even ask you, like, "What did you experience?" They were just like, "Oh, you're a woman, you deployed, you're in the Air Force, not a big deal, you should be fine." It's like, it doesn't matter, and you should find out, like, why. Yeah, it's really crazy. I went through counseling during the withdrawal of Afghanistan with Cohen
Okay.
Veterans Network, and it was really helpful to have someone to talk to while all that was going on, and a lot of like emotions came up. Even though I've been working on my mental health through a bunch of other different aspects and programs, but that was like perfect timing. Like when I started, I had no idea that that was going to happen, and so it was really nice to have that.
Okay. Hey, sounds great. What other things were you working on your mental health? You said you working on some other programs. Like what else were you doing to find success in that area?
I went through a program called Celebrate Recovery. It's based off the 12 steps of Al Anon and AA. And so I went through those 12 steps and I went to groups and we did group meetings and we would talk about how we were feeling. And I just helped bring a lot of closure, and it helped me to recognize, like you said, a ticking time bomb. Like it would help me recognize that I was about to spin out of control and like lose my crap. And so I was
Yeah.
able to either stop it from happening or at least recover quicker because I was able to notice like where I was at. And so I got a lot of tools to help me with my mental health and to like recognize things happening in my body and being aware of those things, and then opening up and talking to my children about what I was feeling, even though they were little, just to help them understand what was going on.
How was I already know because I was in it too, but how was it being like married both on active duty? Obviously, you just said you guys didn't spend a lot of time together, but like for people that are out there that may be thinking about getting married or that are married, like what are some things that you might have struggled with that that might not be so common? And what was something that kept you guys going strong? or
I mean,
things?
I think marriage is hard, and maybe people don't realize that. They get all caught up in the like emotions of like, having the perfect wedding day, and then, the honeymoon period wears off and you're still married and
Yeah.
you're like, "Wait, this person isn't quite as amazing as I thought." But I think for us, the communication aspect of, like, being able to communicate while I was deployed, this was before iPhone, so I didn't have a cell phone, but we would set up times to meet for Skype at least once a week, and then we would talk back and forth via email, which is kind of a blessing because I can go back and see all our, the things that we wrote back and forth when we were separated. And so I think communication is really the key. And my husband's still in the military, and it's still an important aspect of our marriage of being able to communicate. And now that we have kids, it's a lot harder because when he's TDY, sometimes, especially if he's on the East Coast, because we're on the West Coast now, I'll be like, yeah, I don't really want to talk to you, especially if you're just gone for a week. Like, I don't want to talk to you till the weekend because just getting the kids through school and, after they get home, getting homework and getting dinner and getting them to bed, it's like, it's too much to try and figure out how to squeeze in like a 5-minute conversation. I'd rather talk to him on the weekends, either when he gets back or, if he's gone for more than a week, talk to him on the weekends for an extended period of time and catch up that way. And so we've kind of adjusted how we've communicated now that we have kids and life's a little different.
Yeah, and it's probably easier with you being out a little bit because if not, like your kids, you have to drop your kids off at daycare. I mean, I used to see it when people were dual military, or if not, they'd drop their kids off at like 6 o'clock in the morning at daycare, and then if they're not old enough to school, they stay there all day, get them at like 1700, and then get home by like 6 o'clock at night. And, the day's already gone. So, hey, props to you for doing your thing as a mom. I'm sure you got your hands full and it's not. I got one son, and it's not easy. So, hey, good for
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
What what was one thing that helped you like? Okay, sorry. Let's put it like this. When you were doing your blog and you started getting that community going, what was like the next thing? Like, what was the domino effect? What was the next thing that you took off running doing?
So I did a 31-day series where you write every day in October, which is as crazy as it sounds. And so I did a 31-day series, which was another community that, everybody signs up for this challenge to write every day in October, and you encourage each other and you communicate. And the first time I did it, I chose military life, and I had different prompts of what to write about for each day, and I got a lot of interest, but I also was not ready to talk about military stuff, so I kind of was like, "Oh, I'm gaining traction. I must be interesting," and not realizing it was the military part that was the thing that was drawing people in. And so I did that, and then I kind of like bounced around all over the place and eventually found myself back talking about military when I did the 31-day series again, but instead of focusing on some random thing, I focused on deployments, and almost all of the people who responded were women. And so that was a big turning point because it shifted my focus to focus on women who've served in the military.
So once you start getting a lot of the feedback, what did you do next? Did you start engaging with those women and like reaching out, connecting with them, or what happened?
Yeah, so I did the series in 2017 on deployments, and then I was like, wow, women, they're so cool in the military. They've done all this stuff and nobody knows about it. I mean, I didn't know about it. And so I was like, I'll do my next series on women. And so I started in January working on the series for October, but my husband's still in the military and we moved from California to Virginia. And so when it was September of 2018, I was like, I can't do this right every day. Even though I had everything pretty much written, it's a lot of work to do the pictures and the blog and everything. And my friend was like, why don't you do a podcast? And if you can't get guests, you can use those stories that you collected throughout the year. And so that was where the podcast idea came from. And I didn't ever run out of women. So I
You can't.
actually
We can't run out. There's millions of veterans. That's the beauty of something like this. You never get. The only thing you have to worry about is someone not committing to do it with you, right? So like
yeah.
you don't have to think about, oh, who am I going to, you just got to put it out there and market yourself and say, hey, woman veteran or whatever. So what happened once you started getting like your interviews and stuff like that for your podcast? Did you do a lot?
Yeah, so I started doing the interviews in October, and then I launched in January. So I had about 12 episodes ready when I started, and it was in a time when there weren't a lot of podcasts, and it got a lot of engagement, and there weren't any other podcasts. There were podcasts focused on veterans, but there weren't any specifically focused on women at the time. And so it got a lot of traction and a lot of interest, and I had all these people signing up on my wait list to be on the podcast, and I was a
Nice.
little overwhelmed, but in a good way. And so yeah, it just kind of grew from there. And one of the things that surprised me was how many young women or girls who were considering joining the military started listening, because they wanted to join the military, but they didn't have anyone to talk to. They didn't know any women. And so the podcast has been a resource not only for like the women veteran community, but also for the next generation of women who want to serve.
Absolutely. I was just talking to a buddy, Rob, about this, and we were saying like how stuff needs to be brought to the people that haven't even served attention, just so they know what's on the back end once they do their time, essentially. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So obviously, it seems like you brought that value to women that listen to your show. So that's great because there's not a lot of information out there, especially like compare and contrast when we went into service. You just go talk to the recruiter. You got to take the ASVAB, you got to get a score. You know what job you might already want, or in your case, you're going to go do ROTC, but you sort of have it all like chimed out in a sense that you're not really thinking about, well, when I get out, I could get this or get that, or I could get this. Like you don't really think that, you just worried about getting in. So
Right.
props to you for bringing that to light. And I saw that you had like over 100,000 downloads. So hey, they were definitely interested in the content that you're putting out. If women want to find it, or veterans, or anybody wants to find you, where can they find you for your podcast or for your content, stuff like that?
So everything is on my blog, airmantomom.com, but then you can find the podcast Women of the Military on your favorite podcast app. Apple is what I listen to, but it's on Spotify and Google Play, and I guess Amazon has their own version of podcast too. And then I also just started this summer, because I'm crazy, doing video too, so it's on YouTube as well.
Let's go YouTube. Yeah, I got mine on YouTube so far, and even like a little bit on Rumble, but I got to get on the other stuff and figure out how to get on all those other platforms and just put it everywhere. Right? Put it
Yeah.
everywhere. Just let them hear it. So what was one thing that you wish you would have known, or a couple things that you wish you would have known before you got out to service? Because just from hearing what you summarize, it seems like it happened pretty fast. You had plan A, but did you have anyone when you were in the service, like, hey, asking you like, hey, excuse me, hey, Amanda, what you going to do, when you get out? Do you have a job? Do you have a plan? Are you good? Or did you say, hey, her husband's still in, you're going to be a stay-at-home mom, and, just that's good to go. What did it look like for you?
Yeah, I had people, but everyone was kind of like, you're going to be a military spouse. It's really hard to have a job as a military spouse because you're always moving.
That's
And
true.
so I didn't really want to do civil engineering anymore. That's what I got my degree in, because I don't know, it's not as interesting. I liked it in school a lot more than in the workforce. And so I didn't really have a mentor, or didn't know what to expect. And I think one of the things I wish I would have known was like all the resources that are there for veterans, and how many commonalities you have with other veterans. Because I think in the military, you're in the military, you have people, they're all around you, and you think, oh, obviously we're similar and I have someone to talk to. But when I left the military and became a military spouse, I felt like I didn't belong in the veteran community, which isn't true. And I think sometimes we can feel like, oh, I don't belong because I'm not, X, Y, or Z, whatever the case may be. But the veteran community is so amazing because there's so
Seriously.
many amazing. I mean, there's like LinkedIn, you can find, you have a LinkedIn account and you connect with all these veterans. And if you're looking for a job, there's people out there willing to help you. There's programs that are free that can help you. There's like all this stuff. And then I've gotten to go to the Military Influencer Conference and meet so many veterans there and have like great conversations and just have a support around me, both on the women veteran side and male veterans. And it's just so amazing to be a part of that community. So
what was your like reasoning, or what was your like, devil on your shoulder, like whispering in your ear, like what were they saying for you about not belonging in the military community, like the veteran community? Did you have like a specific saying, or
well, because I transitioned to be a stay-at-home mom, I felt like I wouldn't relate to anyone else who transitioned out of the military because I thought my experience is so different. Like the emotions that I'm feeling are very different from what, someone who goes into the workforce or goes to school. But then I found that that lack of identity, that trying to figure out the next step, that's a common thing for all veterans. And
yeah.
so it doesn't matter like what your transition situation is, like those emotions of like losing your sense of community, losing a sense of purpose, those are things that resonate with almost all veterans. And so when I had a conversation, you should have Ben Kaloy on your podcast. He's a great person, but we went to lunch and he was talking about transitioning and he was saying the same thing I was feeling. And I was like, oh, this isn't like something just I experienced. He was like saying the exact same words that I would describe my transition, and his was very different. He went to school after he got out of the Marine Corps, and we've been friends for a long time, and that conversation just really sticks with me because it was like an open door to being welcomed into the veteran community.
How long were you out for when you had that conversation?
Let's see. That was in 2019 and I got out in 2013, so 5 years.
It's like you probably thought, I wish I would have heard this 5 years ago, right? You're like, I would have already been good to go, like, but you're right. I struggle with the same thing. Like you try to get these jobs. I don't know. For me, it was like bouncing from job to job, not finding my worth, you know what I mean? Type of deal. So I was like still trying to figure out my why too. And it's just like, yeah. And then no one in the civilian sector really gets it because, I mean, they probably weren't 20 years old in Afghanistan running the class 1 yard or, whatever the case may be for anyone kicking indoors or whatever your case may be out there. It's not about my story. It's about all of our stories and all of our worth, because we're all worthwhile, like you get out and you think you fall into this dark place, but talk to friends, because you never know. You might talk to someone, they're going to say the same thing that you've been thinking. And it might be that aha moment for you to be like, wow, let's talk about it. Because I mean, it feels good to talk about something that you can relate to with, like me and you, we're veterans. We both war veterans. We can talk and have a conversation we've never met before, but we could pick it up because we have that common ground, in the military. So that's great. And what was his name? Ben
Kaloy.
Get on here, Ben. We're calling you out, man. We're calling you out. But what programs did you use, if any, that helped you through your service, your transition of service out of service?
I used the TAP program, which was the thing that recommended for me to get on LinkedIn. And then I did a mastermind program with, that's how I met Ben. And I can't remember who it was with. His name is escaping me. And that was, through that I met Ben Cloy, and then Ben and I have been friends. He used to do a podcast called The Military Veteran Dad, and it was about like fatherhood and how it relates to military. And it was like just meeting him and meeting other veterans. And then I also went to the Military Influencer Conference in 2018, and that was the first time that I'd really been around the veteran community since leaving the military. And so that was also like an eye-opening experience to get to connect with other veterans. And it was also weird because I was starting a podcast and I was like feeling this turmoil because I had gotten really involved in the military spouse community, but I was focusing on veterans. But the military spouses were like, no, go veteran side. You need to tell the stories of women who have served. So it was really an interesting dynamic.
So you bounce from one end to the next, but hey, it's all at the same time. It's all military, right?
Right.
Military spouse is still part of the military. I mean, they have it just as bad, too. So
Yeah. Yeah, I still have a lot of military spouse friends because I am a military spouse, and I understand the challenge of moving and and being on the back burner while your spouse's career takes center stage. And so yeah.
yeah. So I just came up with a good question. I haven't asked anybody yet. What's your take on some things that maybe women go through in the military that the light's not really shined on? It could be mental, it could be physical, like stuff that maybe that you experienced or people that that may not really be out in the light right now. Anything that comes to mind?
I think a lot of women put a lot of pressure on themselves to go above and beyond and not just, be bare minimum, but like they push themselves to prove that they belong, that they're there. And so I think that is something that is like a weighted pressure that people don't really understand, how that affects us as women. It's like something that we don't even really realize that we're doing sometimes. But I know I've talked to women who've been the first to do something and they feel this pressure not only to do it, but to do it so that another woman can do it behind them. So there's like this pressure to not only open the door, but to leave it open for the people behind them. And I deployed with the Army and attached to an infantry unit. And so I felt that pressure being a woman who was serving in a combat role before combat exclusion was lifted. And so I felt like not only did I have to like meet the minimum PT standards and do the rock marches but I needed to do, just as good as my male counterparts because there was this pressure to not only do what I was supposed to do, but do better than everyone else. Except at shooting, I was not a good shot.
Yeah. Hey, at least you're honest though. Some people tell you they shot a 40 out of 40 and hit
Oh
like
yeah.
12. So
No.
hey, it's all good. Um, what would you describe your military service in one word? What would the word be?
Fulfilling.
Fulfilling, yeah.
Yeah.
You think it was all worthwhile at the end?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. There were challenges, of course, but I I mean, I don't live in the small town that I used to live in. I've got to meet so many people. I've traveled all over the country. I've traveled all over the world. Like, it's been an eye-opening experience and something that I never expected. And then being able to use my experience in the military to start a podcast, to be a freelance writer, to write books, like that's been really cool that not only was my time in the military really important to me, but it's affecting my livelihood and what I'm doing today. And I think that's really cool that I can take my time in the military and it's not over just because I left the military, but I can continue to give back to the next generation by doing what I'm doing today.
Awesome. What books have you
I
written?
wrote two books. The first one's Women of the Military. It's very much like the podcast. It's very similar questions. It starts with why did you join, goes through their career and talks about challenges and what they're doing today. And then I wrote a book called A Girl's Guide to Military Service. And so it's for high school girls and it starts with why should you join the military? Is it right for you? Goes through the different aspects of what branch, how to serve, officer enlisted, career fields, goes into preparing for basic training, and then the mental, emotional, and physical challenges of military life. I wanted to give people a strong foundation into the military so that when they leave the military, they're already starting to think about transition when they're joining because they're thinking in their career field, what branch should I choose? What career field? What's going to be best for me when I leave the military in 4 years or 20 years? And so that was why I created that book.
Oh, that's awesome. Try to like put the pieces of the puzzle together before you got to finish. But that's a great point too. Like before you join the military, you got to have an exit plan too, because one day you're going to get out. Even if you do 35 years or 40, you're still getting out. I mean, maybe you
Right.
don't have to have that plan if you're only going to do so in your foresight. If you're only going to do 4 years, you got to be more prepared. But I know I didn't really have a plan when I was getting in the military. I knew I wanted to do 4 years, not have student loans, do something good with my life, travel, serve. But Yeah, and it goes by fast. I mean, you got kids, right? Doesn't the time speed up when you have kids? Like, I mean, we look back, man, my son's 7 now. Okay. And I had him after I got out of the military. So that's been 15 years already. It's like, man, I'm only 35. I don't even feel like I'm old, but that's almost half my life.
Yeah,
Like, so it goes by fast, y'all. And where can they find those books? Are they on Amazon?
they are on Amazon. Yes,
All
they're
right.
also on my website if they want to get them there.
Okay, cool. What made you decide to write the books? Is that, I mean, obviously you love writing, but you're like, hey, I'm just gonna do this project. Was it something that you challenged yourself with?
So the first book was gonna be the blogging series, and then remember I said they were my backups if I
Yeah,
didn't have, but then I never had, and so I had all these stories. I had 28 stories, and I was like, well, I need to do something. And my friend told me about Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing, and so I used that to self-publish Women of the Military. And then A Girl's Guide to Military Service, I did a free lead magnet to, help generate people to subscribed to my email list, and it was A Girl's Guide to the Military, and a lot of young women started downloading it, and I was like, okay, this 5-page guide is great, but we need more. And so I wrote the book, and I got a publisher, Elvarisa, to help me create the book and to get it out into the world. And so that was the process for that one.
that's awesome. I don't know if I'd ever want. I'll probably do a book sometime, but I don't really like writing like you do. I like to talk. I can talk pretty good, I guess, but writing, like, I guess maybe not English class writing, but if I'm writing or about something that I like or that I've done that it might be a little bit different, I could probably talk a little bit better about it. But
Yeah.
what was the hardest part of doing the books?
The hardest part was like, so writing a book about joining the military, it's really hard to stay at the, like, I'm going to be an Air Force person, like at the 30,000 foot level, because it was really easy to get way too detailed and, talking about the intricacies of the GI Bill and how it all worked, instead of being like, there's a GI Bill or there's money for education after you
Yeah,
finish your service. Because if you put all this like little tiny details, they could change tomorrow and then your book would be out of date. And so finding that right balance of like getting the right information in there but not putting too much information that it would be obsolete and change. And it actually worked out good because I'm meeting later today with someone in Australia who's interested in using the book
nice.
for them. And since it's not like super detailed about the American military, it's something that they think they can use for the Australian forces, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting because I was thinking about it when you were telling me about the girls' guide. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do the guys' guide. I'm gonna do the boys' guide. You better put that boys' guide out there. Do the same thing for them. But no, yeah, you're right. You probably can't get too specific because, yeah, if you did it 10, 12 years ago or whatever the case may be, and you said there's a Montgomery GI Bill, then it changes the post 9/11 GI Bill. Then
Right.
it's like, oh, now my book's like, I got to change that, or I don't even know how that would work. They'd say it's out of date, like you said.
Right.
So. Hey, but props to you. Appreciate you doing that for taking that task on. And I'm gonna check out your books, see what they do, and hand them out to some people if they're interested. You got to get those in the recruiter's hands. Give it to them.
Yeah.
Read this. What was your favorite duty station or favorite place that you've been in the military?
So when I was only in New Mexico and Ohio, and New Mexico was actually, it was a really small base, and so we had a really good community with the lieutenants, and we hung out together, and so that was really fun. And then we've lived in LA twice, which people don't really like LA, but I
Yeah,
really like LA. We're really close to the beach, and the weather's nice, and we're close to Disneyland, and so we've been really happy in LA. And I'm originally from California, so that helps too.
that's not bad. Then I've only heard horror stories, but I know California is still nice though. But I'm from Florida, so I gotta be. Well, I grew up in Florida, so I gotta be biased. We're like rivals. So.
Yeah.
But so what would be your message back to like the old you or to people that are still in the service right now? Because I did want to ask you about the mental health part. Would you have seek treatment beforehand, like before you got out? If you could like rewind time, would have you have went sooner?
Yeah, so I mean, what I would say is if someone tells you you're okay, but you feel like there's something not okay, then go find someone else to talk to and don't stop until you get help because you know yourself. And like, I knew there was something wrong. I didn't know what it was and I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew that there was something wrong. And it wasn't until I started to get help for my mental health. And like that advice of like you're fine really stopped me from going to get help because I had someone. I mean, I wanted to be fine, so I it was like, oh, I'm fine, I don't have to worry about it. But I knew, like, by how, the reactions I was having to different situations and other things. So that was, I would say, if like you feel like there's something wrong, go and meet with someone, talk to someone, and if they tell you that you're fine, then go find someone else. Cohen Veterans Network is nationwide and they do free counseling for active duty and family members and veterans of post 9/11 military members. And so that's a great resource. And then you don't have to worry about it being in your command and you can talk to someone. And when I did my intake with them, I was really worried they were going to tell me, "You're fine. You do not need help."
Oh,
And they didn't say that. So that was like, yeah, so that was like my biggest fear was that someone would be like, "Why do you need help? You're fine." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And
right.
so I would say, like, if someone tells you you're okay and you know that you're not, that, you know, keep asking for help.
Hey, and hey, respect to you for like going back because you could have just said you were fine and never went back, or oh well, these people said I'm good and never go back because you think that you could have had PTSD from someone saying that you're good when you're not, so you're scared to ask somebody else because you think they're going to say the same answer, right? So
Yeah.
good for
I mean,
you
it
though.
took a long time. It took a long time, but I finally, and then when I finally started to get help, I like cried at the meeting and I was like, "Yes, I am in the right place." Because I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
No, I cried in the VA too. It didn't matter. Sometimes you just got to let that out and like break down because you've been holding it in for so long. I mean, you've been getting told you're good. And then you get out
Yeah.
the military and I mean, you're not really that doing that good, and you're dealing with this, and you got kids, and you got all that stuff going on, and it's just like only a matter of time before you're not good. You need to talk, or friends, family, whoever you to somebody better than yourself. Just letting it. It's not going to do any good just sitting inside of you. So, um,
Yeah, and you mentioned the VA. The VA has so many great resources. I just got registered with the VA this year and I went to my first appointment and there was a little booklet and there was like all these classes and programs and all this stuff happening at the Long Beach VA and I was like, this is amazing. And so register with the VA when you get out of the military and take advantage of those resources.
exactly. Did you do it? Did you do a claim like a year before you got out, or like when you knew that you were going to get ready to get out? Did you ever do any medical claims?
I'm working on my claim right now because of the PACT Act because I found skin cancer in 2019 and so that's one of the presumptives and so that pushed me to get my claim done and that was also how I was able to register with the VA because before it was 5 years after service that you could register and now they extended it to 10 and so I barely made the cutoff and
Yeah,
I registered earlier this year and so the PACT Act has really helped because it's opening more doors for veterans to get into the VA. Because when I left, people were like, "You're fine. You're gonna be on TRICARE. Why do you need VA healthcare?" And I was like, "Oh, that's true, but that's not true. There's so many benefits to the VA that I had no idea I was missing out on."
what are some of the benefits that you found out about that you were missing out on?
Well, I didn't understand that VA healthcare and VA disability were like two separate things. And so I didn't understand that I could get my healthcare at the VA hospital. And because my husband's in the military and the military treatment facilities are very different. And when I went to the military treatment facility and was talking about being a veteran, they were like looking at me like they didn't understand like why I was asking the questions. And so just being able to go to the VA and talk to them. They're doing research about veterans. They're aware of different challenges of that veterans are having and so they have all these resources. And then as you get older, there's all these different advantages of like hospice care and more medical care that can cover more of your expenses as my husband isn't in the military anymore in the future. And so it's more like the once a year appointment is great
Yeah.
because and then after that, like they find things and as you get older, there's more and more benefits.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize you can communicate through like My Healthy Vet. You can get on there and communicate through like your primary care doctor. If you got specialty care, you can send messages, and all that stuff goes into your records. So that's like you're already getting that. It's like a double whammy. You know, you breaking the communication barrier, and you're getting stuff in your records. So like if you do have stuff wrong, that's one way to communicate with somebody.
Yeah.
If you don't want to call the 800 number and talk to the operator. So what it sounds like is you're going to be the best coach that you can for your husband then when he gets out, because you had to go through the trials and tribulations of getting out the rough way. So it's like, I mean, for him and probably your friends too, it's like you can share your struggles, because we went through we went through those 5-10 years of pain, not knowing. But now it's like, at least you can tell people. I'm sure he won't have a problem getting out because you've already done it all. So he better come to you
If
for
you
help, and
listen.
you better do your own ACAP with him, like get him in order and get him in check. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're getting closer and closer to retirement, so I'm already starting to bother him.
There
Like,
you
you
go.
need to start thinking about the future.
Hey, seriously, the Orlando, he was a retired command sergeant major. He said he started thinking about getting out the army at 20 years, and he did another 12. So it's like never too early to think. You know, it's never, because you're going to get out
No.
one day. I mean, you don't have to start applying for jobs right away, but I mean, get your stuff in order. I think you can do your disability claim, if I'm not mistaken, from what I've heard, is like a year out from like retirement. You can actually like do your disability claim. But the crazy thing is, people still wait till they're out, or they're like, oh, I just did my VA claim May 4th, I'm out June 5th. Well,
Right.
you didn't give yourself any time to like get feedback. It's the easiest to do it when you're in the service. So don't wait.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. So I mean, you know,
Well, and there's so many appointments because, like, I'm doing my claim now, and I had to go to one place to do the first appointment, and then I had to go to another place, and like, no one's paying me when I'm driving. I mean, the VA reimburses you for mileage, but like,
if it, yeah,
I have to, when you're on active duty, you can take that time off to go to the appointments, and you don't have to worry about it because you're on active duty and you're still getting your salary. But when you're not, you have to take time off work. It's not the same. So
no, and that's what kills people from going to the VA, because they don't have the time. Hey, I'm busy. I'm working 50 hours a week. I'm working 9 to 5. I can't go to the VA. I gotta put food on my table. Well, it's like you gotta be able to either take care of that as soon as possible, or balance both. That way you get to what's rightfully yours. So
yeah.
good job. Hey, good job to not give up on yourself and your family, because I'm sure like once you're done with your claims, you got the stuff in your record, you got deployment, you should get taken care of, and it will just only add more benefits to your family's future. So
Yep.
that's good. What was your favorite dining facility that you ever ate at?
Oh, I didn't go to the DFAC very much. I guess I would say Bagram because I was on a tiny fob and something happened and like the order got lost and at one point we had like no food really and
Oh
so
gosh.
it was like the weirdest it was there was no milk. That was like we ran out of everything. Luckily we had a bunch of food in our office that we lived on top of
Would
ramen.
y'all
And
have
so
cereal, Otis Spunkmeyer muffins? What y'all have?
yeah, yeah. We had a lot of those little, like, cup of noodle bowls and
Yeah.
popcorn. Those were, like, our favorite things,
You eat that
and
stuff still to this day, or you over it?
I still like popcorn, but I don't eat cup of noodle. But, yeah, when we would get to go to Bagram, there'd be, like, a salad bar and burgers and, like, all this yummy food, and so when we would do convoys back to Bagram and then do missions out of Bagram because we were pretty close, and we had to go over a mountain range to get to the northern part, and so, like, once a month, we would get to go to Bagram, and I was like, "Yes! We get to eat food!"
Surf and turf. We'll get those big defects that throw down. So, what was your favorite MRE?
Um, I didn't like MREs. I'm trying to think. I like those, the little muffins that they were like the pound cake
Yeah, the
bars?
pound cake.
Tho
What they had, one that was like lemon poppy pound cake and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was, like, my favorite thing to eat on 'em. I think I like the chicken noodle soup one the best. I just remember, like, I didn't want the egg one. That was, like, the one that
No.
no one wanted. They'd be like, "I don't want this one."
Hey, I'm gonna tell y'all a secret. All right, I'm gonna let you know a secret right now. If you're a cook, you know you get to deal with all the food, so you can just go ahead and as they call it, rat rat fuck through the the stuff. You could just make your own MRE meal. So if
Yeah.
you ever want to join, cooks get a little bit of privilege when they touch the food. MREs aren't that great, to be honest with you. You always got to look for the the M&Ms, the
The
Skittles,
M&Ms. Yep.
stuff like that. Then you can barter and get something better. So that's tricks of the trade for you. Who
That's so true. That's so true.
it I mean, yeah. And then in Afghanistan, you probably had like Otis Spunkmeyer muffins, like Famous Amos cookies. But it's like
Yeah.
after you have that, like people love Rippets over there.
Yeah.
Gatorade cakes. It's like that stuff was like gold. If you had access to that, I mean, everyone's your best friend. Hey, can we get some Rippets? Can we get some Gatorade?
Yeah.
I was all for it because why not? What else do we have this stuff over here for? You got some people that were sticklers that be like, where's your memorandum? Where's this? Where's that? Like, dude, all this stuff sitting in containers over here. You think we're gonna bring all this stuff back? We gave
Right.
everything away anyways, so it's like whatever. Pop tarts, cereal.
Pop-Tarts. Yeah.
But those are the good old days. I don't miss those parts. But who would you call out for a call to action to come on here and share their story? Who would you call out?
Well, I said Ben.
Mine
Ben
is
Kaloy.
Ben already seems like he's coming on and telling his story, but who else you
I,
got? Give me some
I know.
women. We got to get some more women on here. Women do great things in and out the military. Got a few of y'all on here, but we're looking for more.
Kim Campbell just wrote a book. She's a A-10 pilot, and she just left the military a few years ago, and so she has a really cool story. Flying in the Face of Fear is her book, and she did. And then Eileen Bajorkman just wrote another book called Fly Girls Revolt, and it's about women who broke the door in for women to serve in combat and aircraft. So it's in like from when women got to fly in the military, and that they're celebrating its 50 years this year for the Navy, and then in 2 years it'll be 50 years for the Air Force. And so she wrote about all the things that happened prior to 1993 when women were allowed to serve in combat aircraft. And so she would be another good interview. Those are two I have done recently that I really like their books. I read a lot of books by women
Okay.
veterans.
All right, cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Do you want to close out with anything like to the women, to the veterans, to anybody out there that may be going through something, or any closing remarks from your end?
I think just remember that your story matters. It's so important that we share our stories, even if it's not on a podcast and it's just with your family members or your friends. I mean, sometimes it's okay to say, like, I can't answer questions right now. We have to take care of our mental health. But if you're able to share your story, share pieces of your story. My uncle served in Vietnam, and one time I asked him about his experience, and he initially was like, I can't talk about it. And I respected that. But it took him a few months, and then he wrote back and sent me like all these stories from his time in Vietnam. And it was really healing for him, and then it also was really cool for me to hear about his experience in Vietnam, something he didn't really want to talk about, but he did share with me, and it was really special. So if you can share your story with the next generation, we need to hear your stories, and they're so important.
All right, appreciate that. What are you working on now? You get the summer coming up. I know you told me your kids are about to get out of school, so full-time mom in effect. But what else you got going on? Anything in the works?
No, I'm just trying to get ready for the summer for the podcast. I pre-recorded so that I could take a break,
Nice.
and then I still do freelance writing for a few different things. So I'm working on an article for clearance jobs about the Space Force. I read a really interesting book called Space Power Ascendant that my husband recommended, and it's really fascinating and explains much better than my husband has explained to me on why we need a space force and what China is doing and why we need to pivot how we look at space. And it's a really good book. So I'm working with them to write an article about that book and some of the things that I've learned from it, because I think so many people don't understand the Space Force and why it was created and how important it is to America's future. And so that book is really good.
Okay. All right. Appreciate you sharing that. And just wanted to say thank you for what you're doing, for the veteran community, for the women, for everybody out there, all your, thanks for being vulnerable and sharing your trials and tribulations with me and everybody else today. And if you have any questions about, your disability, once you get your rating back, I'd be happy to help you or try to point you in the right direction because I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to help as many as I can just like you are. So I appreciate your time, and it's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Thanks so much for having me.
No problem. Thanks everybody for listening in. Until next time, have a blessed one. Thank you.